The Culture Pop Podcast is brought to you by the law offices of Jacob Emrani.
Accident or injury, call Jacob Emrani. Call Jacob.
Hey, it's Mace. If you or a friend or loved one is injured in an accident, the first person you should call is my friend Jacob. When I did this, Jacob was great. He helped me by talking through the next steps, which really put my mind at ease. When you're injured in an accident, you got to have an expert. That's why you call Jacob, just like I did. Call Jacob, 844-24-JACOB. That's 844-24-JACOB, or visit calljacob.com.
Call Jacob.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Culture Pop Podcast. I'm Steve Mason, along with 𝐬𝐭𝐞𝐫. This is the show where we talk about everything happening in the world of pop culture. Great guest today, Tanner Buchanan, who plays Robbie Keene in Cobra Kai, which is out now on Netflix. The final season is streaming, season number 6. In the meantime, Sue Ballou, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, Steve. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Now, I would argue that this may be the most physically fit podcast team ever. What do you think?
I actually, when you popped on and I saw the shirt you were wearing, I said, wow, now you've changed your wardrobe into, like, look at you. You got guns.
I got guns now. Yeah. Yeah. And you've got your triathlon coming up. When's your triathlon?
Sunday.
Are you nervous? Do you get nervous?
I get a little nervous. You know, it's kind of the same feeling I would get when I was doing stand-up. You know, I always felt good about what I was doing, but you always have that little anxiety.
Yeah, I hear you. And, of course, the Sharks.
Yeah, the Sharks, of course.
The Sharks.
Can't forget the Sharks.
Cannot forget them. All right, here we go. So we both saw the movie Fly Me to the Moon, which is directed by Greg Berlanti, written by Rose Gilroy, who, Sue, you may not know, Rene Russo's daughter wrote that movie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's a rom-com starring Scarlett Johansson, Channing Tatum, Jim Rash, Ray Romano, Woody Harrelson. Tells the story of an advertising executive who's hired by the office of the president to sell the Apollo program to Americans in the late 60s when interest was flagging. So, Sue, in my head, I've got a prediction of your reaction to this movie, but I want to hear your reaction first to see if it matches.
If there was ever a perfect movie, it was this movie. I loved this film.
Wow.
You didn't think I was going to like it, huh?
I thought you were going to hate it.
No.
Because you don't like schmaltzy stuff.
But, you know, it was done so well. The casting was amazing. The chemistry between Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson was phenomenal. Ray Romano was always great. I love the kind of schlubby type of, he always has that gait of like someone who's got the world on his shoulders.
Yes, he does.
You know?
Yes, he does.
And just like there are scenes where he's walking away and he's just hunched over just a little bit when he walks into a room. I mean, just his physical sense as an actor. I mean, he's really terrific.
And how about that Jim Rash as the hilarious director?
And you know, he's a the improv group in LA. What's it called?
Upright Citizens Brigade?
No, it's not.
Brigade?
He's a Groundlings guy.
Oh, a Groundlings. Okay.
And he won an Oscar years ago for a script. He co-wrote a script. And I think it was an animated script.
An animated script.
I'm almost positive. But I know he definitely has an Oscar for writing. He was great. And there's an actress, and I don't know if you remember this scene.
Okay.
Where they were, Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson are in the break room, and they're talking kind of secretively, but there's a woman who works there who's like eavesdropping. I don't think she's purposefully, maybe she is, but she's there in the room. And they look over at her, and they ask her to leave or whatever. And she just, if anybody had a moment of just like making a moment out of such a small part.
Yeah.
Her name is Lauren Rivard. Never seen her before, but she took such advantage of such a slight situation in this film. She was great. So even people who weren't like top billing, I thought were great.
Yeah. All right. So I had no idea you were going to go that direction. I love Scarlett Johansson. Like, for me, this is her movie. I like the kind of Mad Men advertising executive kind of thing going on. I mean, she's also a con woman and an advertising exec, and really interesting. I just find her to be so engaging as and Channing Tatum's great, but for me, it's Scarlett Johansson's movie. And as you said, great supporting cast. Love the supporting cast. All right, so I'm going to be the one that likes this one less. Script is very fat. For me, the movie kind of starts slow. The second act is kind of bloated, and the movie was 2 hours and 12 minutes. Should have probably cut a half hour off thing, but it's kind of charming. It's kind of funny. It's kind of smart, but only really kind of for me. I mean, I love a good romantic comedy, but this one I thought was too long. And I'm never the guy that says too long, but for me, they could have chopped some of this up.
Yeah, it just flowed for me, and I thought that the lines were great. Now that you told me that Renee Taylor's daughter wrote it, I mean, she's definitely a chip off the old block for sure.
Yeah,
because I thought her sense of comedy was really sharp, and just Woody Harrelson, what a great character. I loved
lovable heavy.
You totally, and I loved the weaving, and I know that it's not really. There is some reality in there because they weaved in a lot of archival footage of what was happening with the shuttle and, the moon landing and all of that.
Yeah.
But I never for one moment thought, oh God, I got to get out of here. This is too long. I thought the script was really, really good. And again, that the chemistry between the actors was so strong that's what really, really made it. And I loved the music was great.
Yeah.
Soundtrack was phenomenal. And the wardrobe was I loved, and I loved Channing Tatum's his mock turtleneck short sleeve sweaters.
Yes.
I mean, and it's so funny how in the control room he's the only one. He's like the leader of a band because the band leader always had maybe a little bit of a different outfit, to stand out, whether it was a color of the suit or whatever. So he was the only one who had like a colored and a mock turtleneck. Everybody else is wearing crisp white man-tailored shirts, and he's a lot of them wearing ties, and he's the only one, the leader of the pack, dressed a little very kind of chic 60s.
Yeah, the one thing that amazes me is that as you go back and look at this and you think, all right, it's 68 or 69? One of those.
And,
just
I know
before
it was
1960. But it still amazes me that we were on the moon. Like, isn't it just an amazing thought in and of itself? I know we're trying to go back now, but the fact that we went on the moon and the way that captured the world, like, for example, I was a little kid, so I was probably 3 or 4 years old when this happened. And my mom and dad were in San Francisco, so I was staying at the Demerlease. You know the Demerlease, right?
Yeah.
No, probably not.
I don't.
So they were our neighbors. So we stayed there, and Mrs. Demerle, when the moon landing was going on, made us sit down in front of the TV and said, you are going to remember this. And you know what? The fact that she did that, I do remember man walking on the moon for the first time, which I thought was really, really cool of her. It's interesting. The movie only did $10 million on opening weekend. It had a really good Rotten Tomatoes score.
What was the score?
Let's see. The Rotten Tomatoes score was 70%. I'm sorry, 67%.
Oh,
which honestly,
I thought it would be higher.
For me, which feels about right. Like on the Mason Rotten Tomatoes scale, I would give it 70, which is likable. It's watchable. It's but again, here are two major movie stars, and the movie didn't work. What demo do you think was most into the movie? Gave it the best score?
I would think an older demographic.
Women 25 plus.
Yeah.
Women 25 plus. And I'll say
Yeah.
this for the movie. So having written about box office for a long time, a lot of times when a movie is geared for an older audience, it holds better and does better for longer because older folks aren't necessarily the ones that rush out to the movie on the first weekend. So it's still going to perform a little bit. But, I was thinking here, so Scarlett Johansson, Channing Tatum, earlier this year, Ryan Gosling with The Fall Guy, another romantic comedy. Emily Blunt was in that. The movies just didn't open well. And so I started thinking, well, who can actually open a movie now? What star is big enough and connects enough to actually open a movie? And I would argue that there are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people that can open a movie now. How many do you have on your list?
Well, I have more than that. I have maybe 10 people that maybe
10
can.
people. Okay.
Maybe.
Now, we'll see if we overlap a little bit. But go ahead and start your list, and I'll tell you where we match.
Tom Cruise,
Tom Cruise is on my list. Absolutely.
The Rock,
The Rock is on my list. Absolutely.
Timothée Chalamet,
Absolutely on my list. You're 3 for 5 right now.
Tom Holland.
No,
Okay.
he's not on my list.
Okay.
He opened Spider-Man, but I don't know if he opens movies that aren't Marvel.
Okay. Margot Robbie.
Oh, I didn't put her on the list. Yeah, I think you're right. I think she can open a movie. Yeah, I think she can, especially after Barbie.
And this is kind of an odd choice, but I think he's very popular. Jason Statham.
Yeah, Jason Statham is really good. He can be really funny, but I don't know if anybody's rushing out opening weekend to see a Jason Statham movie.
Okay.
I think he's great. But I don't think he necessarily opens a movie.
Keanu Reeves. Because the trilogy of movies that he does are very popular, aren't they?
Yeah, no, they are. The John Wick movies are great, but I think John Wick opens John Wick, and yeah, I think John Wick opens. I don't know if he can open a non-John Wick movie and open it big, but John Wick definitely plays.
Emma Stone.
Well, she did open Poor Things, which did really well. I don't know. Maybe she opens a movie. Maybe.
Okay, so when I went online to look to see who they're talking about.
Yeah.
And they said Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, I don't think he can open a movie.
I don't know. And they said Samuel Jackson.
Well, Samuel Jackson is a great supporting character in movies. Like, he's been in Star Wars, he's been in Marvel. So all that stuff. He's the number 1 grossing box office star in history, if you count all of his supporting roles and all the things that he did. But I don't know if Samuel L. Jackson opens a movie. You're missing 2 names off my list. Who else?
Martin Lawrence.
I don't think he opens a movie. I think he opens Bad Boys. I don't think he opens a movie solo.
Okay.
So here are the ones that you're missing from my list.
Oh, one more.
Leonardo. Oh, yeah.
I was just about to say, he was my last one. Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah. And I think he opens a movie because Leo movies are rare. He doesn't put out a lot of them, and they all seem to be of a really high quality. So when one comes around, it's a really big deal. So Leo's on my list. Zendaya is on my list, who I think can open a movie. And open Challengers, which has done really well, which is a quirky little movie. And I think Glenn Powell can open a movie.
I have him here too.
Yeah, he's got big movies coming up. He's got Twisters coming up this weekend. I think, is going to be he's not quite there yet, but he's going to be a gigantic movie star, I think. Classic movie star.
And he's everywhere. He's doing commercials now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he's everywhere. The names that didn't make it for me, Brad Pitt, I don't think can open a movie anymore. George Clooney, nothing lately. They've got a movie coming out together later on this year, which is interesting. That'll be a test. Austin Butler, Elvis, Bike Riders, Dune. Still don't think he's quite there. Kevin Hart, close to being able to open a movie. Will Smith, we'll have to see past Bad Boys. None of the Avengers, really. So Chris Evans, Captain America, Chris Hemsworth, Thor. I don't think those guys open a movie. And I don't think Robert Downey Jr. does either. If you're talking about just single-handedly opening a movie. Meryl Streep, again, it's an event when she makes a movie, but I don't know that she opens it. And Julia Roberts, who I think did a movie last year, a rom-com with George Clooney that didn't work especially well at the box office. So I think that's also a test for her. But yeah, I think there are very few people now that can actually open a movie.
Yeah, well, that's where we're at, I mean,
that is where we're at.
I'd be really curious to see who were the actors that opened movies, like years and years ago.
Oh,
you know? I mean, that would be interesting.
Yeah, the 70s, I think, was an interesting era because Pacino, De Niro, actually directors were successfully opening movies, I would argue, whether it be Coppola or Arthur Penn or Warren Beatty, all those guys, I think, could open movies based on being a director. And certainly Warren Beatty could open a movie. All those people from the 70s, I think, were great.
Dustin Hoffman, I mean, just, huge stars. Yeah.
Yep. And the other thing was, in the 70s, we didn't focus on blockbusters as much as we do now.
Yeah.
It was film, and then around Star Wars, it became movies. That's the way I've always viewed it. Star Wars, the first, technically, I think Jaws was the first big blockbuster, which should have been 75, I think. And then after that came Star Wars in 77, and then we were in blockbuster culture. You either do 100 million or the movie's a bomb. But we'll see how the Fly Me to the Moon continues to perform. I think it's going to run for a little while, but I think it's going to come in disappointing. And it makes me wonder, especially after The Fall Guy, is the rom-com dead?
Yeah, not in my mind, it's not.
Yeah,
but
it's a great genre. It's a great genre. I love a good rom-com. But there are fewer and fewer people that I think are opening those movies successfully. I wanted to do one thing. Robert Towne, you can probably see if you're watching on YouTube, I've got a Chinatown poster behind me signed by Robert Towne. He passed away at the age of 89 a couple of weeks back. And I saw, and he directed, obviously he wrote Chinatown with great lines, are you nosy, kitty cat, and summer colds are the worst, and forget it, Jake, it's Chinatown, great stuff. He wrote Shampoo, which is an iconic movie. He wrote The Last Detail, which was a Nicholson movie, which was terrific. But one of the things he did was he worked as a script doctor. So he actually wrote on Bonnie and Clyde for Warren Beatty, Parallax View for Warren Beatty. And then on The Godfather, he was asked by Francis Ford Coppola to come up with a scene for Vito Corleone, Marlon Brando to die. He wrote the scene in which Brando was in the tomato patch with his grandson, and they were spraying the insecticide or whatever it was, and Brando grabs onto the tomato plants and falls down. And
it's when he had the orange peel in his mouth.
He had the orange peel in his mouth. Yeah, that was all Robert Towne, which I think is just genius.
Yeah.
So Robert Towne, as we say on Mason and Ireland, hail fellow, well met, an amazing career, an amazing life. 89 years old, which is a great run. Do you anticipate to be alive when you're 89?
If I keep doing triathlons, maybe.
Right. If you keep on going, sure.
The life expectancy in my family is not very long. I have one grandfather who I never met. He lived to 82, but everybody else, my parents, passed away 64, 67.
Wow.
And my grandparents, all my other grandparents, I think, passed away in their 70s.
So you're on bonus time. No, I'm
on
just
bonus
kidding.
time.
You're
well,
on
I am,
bonus time.
as regarded. Well, I'm the same age I was when my mother passed away. So.
Oh yeah. Do you think about that a lot?
Oh God, yeah.
Do you?
When my father died at 64, it's like, oh my God. I'm older than my father when he died. That's crazy.
My grandparents all lived forever. They still may be out there somewhere. My
And you know, and the craziest thing, it's like I look at, you know, just the way I look and the way I act, and I
Yeah.
think of my parents at the same age. And my parents, I mean, they were older. I mean, they were old.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I mean, my father really seemed very old. And, you know, everything about, you know, the way he dressed, the way he talked, the way he, you know, everything about him was old. And and I don't know whether, what was it, you know, the fact that they had 5 children, that aged them so much, or it was
Yeah.
just the era,
I
you
think it
know?
was just the era. I mean, I think people stay younger, at least in their head, longer now than they used to, right? I mean, I think like you're running triathlons. I mean, seriously, no, your family would have never thought of that.
My mother, we belonged to a beach club in Long
Yeah,
Island.
sure.
My mother never got her hair wet. She would
Neither did mine, by the way. Neither
her
did
and all
mine.
her and all her friends, they would go in the pool and they would wade because they went to the beauty parlor every week.
Yeah, exactly.
So they never wanted to get their hair wet.
Yeah, yeah,
So she never swam. She just went
Yeah.
in to cool off.
yeah. My
It's-
grandmother, Rose Santa Cruz, 6th Avenue, Altoona, Pennsylvania, had an enormous architectural construction for hair because she had hearing aid in one ear. So the entire hair thing would lean to one side because she wanted to cover the hearing aid. And she went to Barry at the Golden Comb. That was her beauty shop, the Golden Comb. And she never realized he was gay, even though there was a picture of him and his boyfriend at Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, arm in arm on her mantle. Never dawned on her, oh, he might be gay. And one day they had a pool and she never went underwater. So one day we're all at the pool in Altoona, and all of a sudden my Aunt Bridget says, oh my God, I didn't know Rosie swam underwater. And we looked, and Gable was underwater. She had slipped out of her inner tube, and her hair was like an oil slick on top of the water. There was so much hair. So she had to rush to an emergency appointment with Barry at the Golden Comb to correct the disaster that was her hair.
Oh, yeah.
So
Well, women of that era, you know, this was such a funny expression, but they wouldn't go out without their face on.
yes, exactly.
Like they wouldn't even go out to like check the mail if they didn't have makeup on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So vanity
amazing.
was such a big thing. So
So I was talking to somebody and they're like, you know, you don't tell people to subscribe enough. You don't tell people to. So I want to do this. If you're watching on YouTube right now, subscribe to the channel. That way you'll know when a new show comes out. And you can leave a comment, leave a review review the show. I would love that. Or review whatever we're talking about. Maybe you saw Fly Me to the Moon and you've got a reaction. You can leave that as a comment under our YouTube post. And then if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, again, subscribe to the channel. Leave us a 5-star rating. I'm instructing you advance, 5 stars. And leave us a review as well. That helps us with the algorithm and people finding the show and all of that stuff. All right. So our guest today has appeared in movies like Max Winslow and the House of Secrets, He's All That, and The Hyperions, but he is best known for the role of Robbie Keane in the blockbuster streaming hit Cobra Kai. Tanner Buchanan joins us. Tanner, thanks a lot for coming on to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Congrats on the show, Cobra Kai back, final season. Everybody is in it, and I don't really want to give any of it away, any of the good parts. But episode 1, it's like not about winning All Valley anymore. It's about the World Championships. And I'm amazed. I grew up on the Karate Kid movies. And you're a young guy before you started this project. Did you watch the original Karate Kid movies, and what did you think of them?
Actually, I had seen 1 and 2. My mom is actually a 2nd degree black belt in karate, and she acquired that during the 80s. So it was right in that time frame of she was a big fan. And I remember watching them probably around 5 years old. Then again, I didn't watch them again until I got the job, and our creators, Josh, John, and Hayden, said, "Hey, have you watched them?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, "How long ago?" I was like, "A while ago." They said, "You should brush up on it." I said, "Okay."
Yeah.
So you grew up with having a martial artist in the family. Was it an interest of yours? Did you partake in that as a kid?
I did in Taekwondo when I was about 9 or 10 and almost got to a black belt, but then quit. And then did Muay Thai when I was about 17 or 18, but that was about it. There wasn't much martial arts interest on my end growing up. There is now.
Yeah, right. And, it's still amazing to me that these characters, Daniel LaRussa and Johnny Lawrence and John Kreese, these are characters, again, I grew up on, same actors, Ralph Macchio, William Zabka, Martin Cove. All these years later, working with them, how have you evolved as an actor?
Honestly, I think it's just watching how they carry themselves, and they're just like truly they are like the nicest guys ever. And I know everyone says that about about people they work with, but they truly are. They're the nicest people you will ever meet. They're always willing to sit down and talk, and they tell you stories of when they were younger, and they gave us their 2 cents on how they handled everything throughout the years. But also just really, really creative. I don't think it's a spoiler. He's talked about it, but Ralph actually directed episode 3. So it was fun to be able to like actually watch him and act at the same time, but direct at the same time, and see how someone handles that, and see that firsthand. So a lot of it's just been stories they've told, and kind of advice, and able to watch them, every single day.
So when you're on set, not only just on this show, just in general, do you have your eyes on kind of every aspect? Because you're talking about Ralph Macchio as an actor directing. Do you kind of taking notes on that for what you may want to do in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm kind of constantly seeing and talking to different departments just to make sure I know what's going on, and understanding how everything just continues to work on a set, or how people do things differently. Or actually, one of our ACs, one of our focus pullers this year, Kane. I took an interest to the focus pulling this year, and kind of she was teaching me how to make sure, knowing my distance and what it looks like on her end. And it actually helped a lot being able to move around in scenes and knowing what I needed to do. And then there towards the end of the episodes, I sat down and was just playing around, and they were like, okay, and rolling. And she looked at me, and I looked at her, and I was like, here. She goes, no. And I was like, what do you mean no? She goes, you got to do it. I was like, what do you mean I got to do it? And she goes, you better roll it. They're about to go. And I said, okay. And I rolled it. And they said action. And she basically, it was just a background shot of the main shot, but I needed to follow, an actor through a scene and end on other actors. So it was fun to be able to, she just was like, go for it. You've been learning all season. It's your turn. And I was like, I don't want to do this. This is way too nerve-wracking. But it ended up being fine, and it was fun. So yeah, I'm always just trying to constantly learn just new kind of things that would help me be a better actor or just performer on set.
So tell me about the fight scenes. The show is filled with great battles, great fight scenes, and I want to know from you what it's like to choreograph one of those, how long it takes. Do people ever take inadvertent shots while you're actually shooting? Tell me about the fight scenes.
I mean, that's all thanks to our fight coordinator and stunt coordinator. Our fight coordinator, Sensei Don Lee, and our stunt coordinator, Ken Bearfield. They're the heads of everything. They're the two big guys in charge and making sure that everybody's safe and everything's as creative and as cool as it possibly can be. But it really, I mean, it's hard because it depends on how much time we have. Sometimes we will have a week for a little fight bit, and I've said it before. I think maybe I know specifically the me and Jacob fight in the All Valley in the end of season 4.
Yep.
We learned that the day before. And it was like 127 or 130 beats of choreo, which is insane.
Yeah.
And also try to make sure that we're doing lines and figuring out and doing this dialogue in the scenes. And then without spoiling anything, there was also a fight this year that was learned and then performed less than 24 hours. That was, I think, over 130 beats.
So how much rehearsal do you do when it's 130 beats and you've got 24 hours?
You just basically you say, hey, we need to come in and learn this, and you basically start at 12 noon, and then you don't stop until you have to go home and go to sleep, and then you dream about it, and then you wake up and you're doing choreo as you're brushing your teeth and like getting ready for the morning, and you're driving. At least this is the way that I do it. And I'm driving and I'm thinking about it, and I look crazy because I know I'm in my mind just kind of looking around with my eyes and then like Bobby, and then like doing that and going, yeah, okay, here, this, now he's got me. I can't move. Like, okay, and then I can do that. So it's like it's constantly. I just look very odd. Yeah, no, it's just like it, and thanks to our stunt team, because without our stunt team, this year specifically, they all of our stunt doubles and the entire stunt team, and Don and Ken worked really, really hard with us to make sure that us as actors got to actually perform just about 100% of it, which was super cool. Our stunt doubles worked really hard with us to make sure that we knew how to take falls correctly and work with each other and work with different, stunt performers. And they really trained us hard to make sure that we were going to be safe, because we all, as the actors, are like, this is the last season. We need to go out with a bang. So we want to make sure that we can do as much as possible. And they worked with us hard and made sure that we were able to. So big kudos to them, because without them, none of this truly would be possible. And the fights this season, I've seen a few. They're the most insane fights ever. It's so cool. It's so cool.
So having a role all these years that is very physical, has it changed your diet? Has it changed your workout routine?
It changes my diet and workout routine about 3 months before we film, while we're filming. And then as soon as I know I don't have any more, then it just all goes out the window. It's like I'm good for like 6 to 9 months. And then after that, I go crazy. It feels like I'm just going to have 2 pizzas tonight. And I'm also going to order a taco and fries from this place. And I'm going to sit here and I'm going to eat it all. You know what? Ice cream and Oreos sounds great. So I'm also going to eat that. And it's like that, like every night for about a month and a half. And then at some point I'm like, okay, I just feel awful now and I can't do this anymore.
So it's a roller coaster.
Yeah, just about.
You started your life, I guess, elementary school in Lima, Ohio. And I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, so I know Lima pretty well. How old were you when you moved from Lima, Ohio to Hollywood, and what was it like getting started as a kid actor?
I was just around the age of 10. And I grew up a tap dancer, and looked up to my cousins who were like siblings. I was raised the only child, but all my cousins were like older sisters to me, and they all danced. And as a younger sibling, you look up to your older siblings and go, oh well, that's what I want to do. So I got into that and did competitive dance for a while. And I was at a competition in New York, and there was agents and managers there, and they were like, hey, have you ever tried acting? And I was like, no, but I like to perform. This is what I've been doing. This is what I want to do. And my mom was about to change jobs. My dad owned his own business. And he's like, well, you're about to change jobs anyway. I can try to pick up some more jobs. And why don't you just take him out to California for 6 months and see if he even likes it? And now we're here 16 years later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that is really amazing. Is there like a particular show or film that you saw when you were younger that sparked you and said, wow, this would be a cool thing to do?
Yeah. Singing in the Rain was the one for me. Like that was like the movie. Like I watched it on repeat over and over and over and over and over again. So that was like my thing where I was like, I want to well, first off, I grew up in a little bit smaller town right outside of Lima, so it was very like there was no like it was very sports oriented. So no boys danced.
Yeah. Right.
And they were, I think it was very frowned upon. I didn't care. I was gonna express myself and do what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But that was what I saw as I watched that movie, and I was like, oh, there's these men that are dancing. Like it's not like I'm not the only one, and it's okay for them to be doing it, and they're having fun performing and like actually doing this, and it's okay. So it was like a big like fun thing for me to see and be like, oh, I really can do this, and people don't seem to make fun of them, and that's okay. So I'm just gonna continue to do it.
That's
God,
awesome, man. That's awesome.
I love that so much because I didn't know that you were a tap dancer, but I never ever expected that to be your answer. Singing in the Rain. And do you still tap dance?
Yeah, I do. I've had a bunch of things in storage and moved things around, and I recently got my tap shoes out of storage. They've been in there for I haven't probably in the past year, but I just picked them back out because I was like, I've been traveling around for a year, and now I'm looking for work, so I have some time to be able to get back into it and take some classes and just fool around.
So
don't eat a lot of pizza. Don't eat a lot of pizza now.
Do you aspire to do a musical yourself as an actor?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to at some point, whether that be, on screen or on Broadway. I'm pretty open to just kind of broadening the horizons and seeing what I can do, and well, I guess what people will let me do.
Yeah, right. A lot of it's not a secret. A lot of child stars get into trouble, right? There are terrible stories about you. How have you avoided all of those pitfalls yourself?
I'm very much an introvert. I think that's probably what it is. But also I just have really good parents, and they've always kept me grounded. And they're also just really good judges of character. So, if it was anything or I was hanging out with somebody, they'd be like, hey, you're your own person and you got to learn at some point, but we'll just give you our 2 cents. If I don't think that person might be the best person to hang out with, and they go, maybe just pay attention a little bit more, and you go and you pay attention. And you're like, oh, well, now I see things. Now I see why. They're constantly always trying to teach me lessons without making me do things. They were very good parents of writing that line of being parents that were always, still teaching me lessons. But making sure that I'm able to figure them out on my own and become my own human being.
So I went on your Twitter page, and you're on your profile.
Yeah.
You have possibly a psychopath. What is that about?
I don't know. It was one of those things where I like horror movies, and I like Scream is one of my favorite horror movies. So it's like the psycho killer kind of obsession of that whole ordeal. I feel like it's just one of those things that it also just sparks people's attention, where you go, why?
Yeah.
Why?
By the way, David Arquette from Scream was our last guest on this show.
Oh, really? Oh,
he was on last week. Yeah. So you mentioned social media, or Sue did. You've got like 3 million followers on Instagram. You've got a gigantic following on Twitter. You've become a really big star. What does that feel like to be known everywhere and have people watching you on a really big show?
Very weird. I'm very grateful that people are fans, and they want to watch the show and they want to follow along with what I do and what the show does and what everybody else does. So, without them, none of this would be possible. However, it is very odd because they all know me and I know none of them.
Yes.
It's very odd. Is not I like at least I know if I'm going and leaving a hotel or an apartment or wherever I may be, I always have to like mentally prepare myself where it's like I don't go out anymore and not encounter somebody who comes up and says hi that I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's very odd. And I'm definitely not used to it. But trying to figure out what that is. But it is nice to see how big of fans there are out there. Because like I said, without them, I would not have a job. And I appreciate that there's such fans that are pushing along this dream that I've had since I've been a tiny kid.
So last thing for you, the show has gone from YouTube to Netflix to international hit. Why do you think the show has blown up? Like, for example, I'm 59 years old. All my friends watch Cobra Kai, partly because we grew up on what do you think the secret is to the success of Cobra Kai?
To be honest, I mean, we've always said it. There might be this, might be that. The true answer is, I don't know. I really don't know. But I can take a couple wild guesses of basically, everybody on the show, what they've done is made sure that this character who was villainized for so many years actually showed a really lighthearted, fun, he's a good guy aspect. And I think the people that may have agreed that he was maybe the real Karate Kid back in the 80s or, Ralph Macchio was the real Karate Kid, I think it sparked this interest of, it truly is like, you can't judge a book by its cover. And every character within the show shows a side of that, and shows a side of going through trials and tribulations of, well, I think this is right, but everybody knows it's not going to be the right decisions. Then they learn their lesson. They learn, I think there's a bunch of learning lessons that people can relate to within every single character. And I think that's what makes it so successful, of just the relatability of everybody within one show, is kind of crazy that, everyone seems to come up to me and say that there is an aspect of at least each character that they can relate to. So I think with that's kind of what makes it so successful. But at the end of the day, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But the beauty of it too is that it's not just the kids that are learning lessons; the adults never stop learning lessons as well, which I love.
Right. Yeah. Well, listen, this has been great. We're excited for, I guess this is the first part of season 6, and then later in the year will be the second part of season 6. Do I have that right?
Yes, correct.
And everybody's fighting for the world champ. We will all be watching. It's such a great show. And Tanner, this has been great. Thanks a lot for coming on, man.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
And there he is, Tanner Buchanan. In a million years, you said it during the interview, I never would have guessed the most influential piece of pop culture he ever saw was Singing in the Rain, and that he was a tap dancer.
Well, that's the thing. I didn't know that about him. I didn't read up enough about him, but it didn't say anything. I don't think it said that on Wikipedia.
No, I don't think tap dancer was anywhere on the bingo card. I just didn't expect it. Cobra Kai, by the way, do you consider yourself to be more Miyagi-Do or more Cobra Kai?
Probably more Miyagi-Do.
Yeah, I am too. I'm more Miyagi-Do. I root for Miyagi-Do. Yeah. Cobra Kai, let's face it, Kreese is an asshole.
Oh,
he's the worst. The worst. Although Martin Kove has been on the show, is really entertaining guy.
Exactly.
Really entertaining.
Yeah.
All right, there you have it. There is the Culture Pop podcast for today. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you next time.